that we like them.
Yeah, yeah.
And he actually, he's very close to our way of thinking. If you notice, if you look at his canon of work, he doesn't write plays twice.
Yes.
Like he wouldn't write another Arcadia.
Right.
And Night and Day is really like a night and day to any other play he's ever written.
Yeah.
It's fairly naturalistic. It still has those kind of devices that he likes. So it's surprising, but
he likes to vary his style.
I think he's so different.
Do you find, having met him and knowing him, I guess, fairly well, that you have this similar sensibility in general?
Yeah. I think he likes to surprise himself.
Okay.
And we talked about that. And we sort of talked about, I was just wondering, once I also directed a feature film based on a Václav Havel play. He's the Czech president who was a playwright and later became president. He wrote a play, Largo de Zlato, and Tom adapted it. And I directed a film of that for WNET Great Performances with F. Murray Abraham, and that was pretty interesting. So when he came to see Night and Day, and when Tom came, we talked about, like, what would it be like if Václav Havel would suddenly sit down and write a play now that he's been a president for, I don't know, X many years. And we sort of agreed that it probably would be a terrible play.
He's been spoiled as a playwright, no doubt.
Because he would repeat himself.
Yeah, and you don't like repetition.
Exactly, yeah.
You've also worked, you directed the East Coast premiere of Resurrection Blues, Arthur Miller's play. Did you work at all with him? Did he come? What was involved in that? That must have been exciting.
It was very exciting. I really liked that play, and it was produced in California, then at the Guthrie, and I thought, you know, for a playwright who has achieved so much to still be writing in his 80s and be so inventive is just amazing. Arthur was supposed to come and be in rehearsals. He just got very, very ill. And it just looked, it was very disappointing because we were all expecting him, and he could not get out of bed with pneumonia, and he could not come even to see the show.
That's too bad. You'll have to be for his next production.
So yeah. But we did talk during auditions, and he came to auditions, and he gave a lot of feedback and a lot of insight, actually, into the
I guess
play.
Traditionally he's been very involved in the productions of his plays.
Yeah.
It's,
and I think the play is supposed to be produced in New York, actually.
Oh, okay.
So it's possible. It was not the most well-received production. I thought it was a very good production. I think people got a little surprised by him, because it's a very it's a sort of a metaphysical plot, and I think people expected the usual
realism.
Old Arthur Miller, like The Crucible or The Death of a Salesman, realism.
I guess I want to ask you a more general question now. What do you think makes a good play? Very general.
I'm still trying to find that out.
Well, I mean, you have a range of tastes, and I suppose that scripts cross your desk. I mean, loads of them every day. What do you look for? What jumps out at you and says this has potential?
I think originality of the initial idea, what the piece is exploring. It has to be original. I think that's sort of the Wilma-esque style. You like innovative pieces of theater. And it has to be executed well. So the language, everything has to sort of, the characters, everything has to work well. But on the other hand, I also like not well-made plays.
Not well-made plays.
Exactly. Well,
sloppy plays?
Well, Charles L. Mee has a whole theory about that he thinks that American theater suffers because we expect every play to be a well-made play. And he, on purpose, makes his plays a little raggedy.
This is the author of
This
Big
is Big Love and
I
Wintertime.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
it is a sloppy play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what he likes.
Because it's got that kind of spontaneity and passion to it. Yeah. I can
And
see
he
that.
suddenly, in the middle of the plot, he opens it up and calls for a dance in the script, but he basically tells you do whatever you like on these themes. And if you go to his website, charlesme.org, I believe it is, he has a project there called Cut and Paste. And he encourages you to go copy any portion of any of his plays and create your own play out of those plays.
How interesting.
Except then you sort of call it your own play. So it's almost like an anti-copyright approach to playwriting.
So he's not territorial about his plays.
Not at all. As opposed to other playwrights where you change a single comma and they will go into a fit.
It's interesting, though, that you say you like not well-made plays. Wouldn't you say Stoppard's plays are very well-made, very crafted?
Mm-hmm.
Very,
yes, they are.
So that really works against that notion.
Yeah, it does. They're very well crafted.
Do you find that audiences are generally uncomfortable by the so-called not well-made play?
Pretty much, yeah. I think Big Love and Wintertime, those two plays by Chuck Mee, were definitely, some people call them abrasive, or it's disturbing.
I did see Wintertime. I saw Big Love, and I will say that there were people around me that were disturbed.
Yeah,
they just couldn't get a handle on what was going on. So,
because he's playing with conventions, and that's disturbing to some people. And he wants to challenge people's perception of what a good or well-made play is. So he's disturbing that convention.
But you have to, I guess, be on that sort of meta level to get it. Otherwise, you might just be thrown.
I think you have to be somehow open to it, just like you have to be open to certain kinds of music. I mean, jazz was not an overnight success either. And that's what his plays sort of remind me of. It's more improvisational, where you can...
More like jazz, yeah.
Definitely.
What does it feel like for you to be in Philadelphia? I would say that you are the premier theater space in Philadelphia, but it's still Philadelphia. To be in the shadow of New York City, have you ever thought of moving to New York? Do you ever think of the fact that you're an also ran in the sense that you're not at the hub, which is New York City? How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't consider Philadelphia to be in the shadow of New York exactly. I think it's what's advantageous about being in Philadelphia is the fact that we can do work that we couldn't do in New York. Like, it would be very difficult to do, when you look at the whole list of productions we've done, some of them would be impossible to do.
Why?
Because of funding and subject matter, but mostly because of money. Everything that you do in theater in New York, you have to multiply it by 5 at least. So
you mean your larger productions and the ones with music and multimedia would be really prohibitive?
Very difficult, yeah.
Interesting.
And, so we have also taken our productions to New York. I mean, whether it was 1984, our own adaptation, Yellow Man, we co-produced with Joseph Papp, Temptation. That was the U.S. premiere of another Václav Havel play. So we're open to co-producing and to touring and all that. But about moving there and just starting up, I don't know.
You like being in Philadelphia? I mean,
well, I like being in the present space because it's a Broadway-sized stage that allows incredible amount of flexibility for staging. And yet it has got 300 seats, so the intimacy is incredible.
I have to say, I love the Wilma Theater. As a space, it seems to me to be ideal. Did you have input in its design? I know it was designed specifically for you.
It was designed by Hugh Hardy and took us a couple of years, just meetings between Blanka and I and Hugh Hardy and his team of designers and architects. And the number one sort of condition we didn't want to abandon intimacy, because we see that as essential for the Wilma.
There's no bad seat in that theater.
Yeah. So there are no aisles, there are no bad seats, there are no balconies. It's been specifically designed and intended like that, and also the acoustical qualities are excellent. We had another acoustician. As you know, there's a subway under us, so we had to eliminate that.
Yeah.
but we don't have to mic the actors; they can just speak.
It's true.
So
The sound is wonderful.
It has a fly loft. It has a huge stage that's like 60 feet deep. That's a Broadway-sized stage. Actually, the room on stage equals the auditorium. So it's a pretty fantastically designed theater. Are
there certain productions that you think of as very much attuned to the theater that you've done recently that you couldn't have done? Well, certainly in your smaller space, but that this space was particularly conducive to?
I think Blanka's production of Invention of Love was I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes,
but
I did.
We flew a boat over the heads of the audience.
Yes. That was wonderful.
That's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that somebody would do that in New York.
Well, when they brought it to New York, did they do it? Do you know?
No.
Yeah.
It's a completely director's choice. It's not in the play.
Okay, but I thought it was very effective.
And I saw the New York production. I liked it. The actor
it was the same actor, wasn't it?
No. The lead was a different actor.
Oh, I thought it was the same. Mm-hmm.
It was Richard Eastman, and later I met with Richard. I think he won a Tony for it, and he was in a production I directed at the Kimmel Center with the orchestra. I don't know if you know about that, but Every Good Boy Deserves Favor. It's a Tom Stoppard script that calls for an entire orchestra to be on stage and incorporated within the action of the play.
I did hear about that, and that was at the Kimmel Center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was a collaboration between the Wilma Theater and the Philadelphia Orchestra. So we had 5 actors, and Richard Eastman was one of them, David Strathairn, and then 110 musicians on stage. It's an amazing piece of writing. It tells a story about Soviet dissidents during 1970s, and one of the characters imagines that he has an orchestra.
So and then an orchestra
it's very
appears.
Funny, but
yeah.
It's another thing I like about Stoppard, that he takes on very difficult, serious subjects, but deals with them in a very humorous way. Yeah, I think that's a gift. Yeah.
Your use of music, I mean, both you and Blanka seem to be drawn every once in a while to a musical production, but something that is generally unusual, unorthodox in its use of music, like Embarrassments, the Henry James musical. What did you think when you began in theater that you would incorporate music? Is that an interest of yours, or did that come about later?
I think that came about a little later, but even our productions in Prague used a lot of music, and I don't know why that is.
The idea of doing something
that it's
new.
Just exciting. I mean, music bridges a lot of territory, I guess. If you want to deal with difficult subjects, if you use music, I think it gives an access for an audience to sort of an access point. I mean, Embarrassments was a beautiful and very unusual musical that also was commissioned by the Wilma, and it took Blanka, I think, a couple of years to develop it.
Yeah, I thought it was an extremely original production.
It was kind of scary in a way, because some people just didn't get it at all.
Yeah, well, I could see that a number of your productions seemed to me to have that possibility of people just tearing their hair out or even walking out during intermission, but I wonder if you don't sometimes see that as part of the success if you get that kind of reaction from some viewers.
Yeah.
Because you're rattling them around
There
a bit.
Is an element of provocation in that.
Provocation is the word.
Provocation and waking people up with unusual devices.
Goes back to your roots in Soviet regime, or communist regime. Well, Jiri Zizka, I want to thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you for joining us today at the Drexel interview.